Okay, welcome to another day in Math 140. So, how are we doing so far? Any input, any questions, any comments?
Chapter
9?
9?
Okay, so you made it that, and one of the hardest parts is that expected value, and I agree. I also looked at some of the questions, and they're kind of asked wrong, because at least in my perspective, and I was trained I was doing actuarial science, which is what that's for insurance and stuff. The expected value really should only be done from the perspective of the insurance company. It shouldn't be done from the individuals, because it's about doing it a lot of times, and you're only going to do it once or twice. So we asked some questions with the expected value from your perspective, but it really has no meaning, and that's where the hardest part is. But you'll be fine. So it's kind of, get through those. Over the weekend, I'll look at what I've got as far as expected value questions, and I'll take a few from the homework. I'll actually make videos of them, because what's hard about them is not understanding the concept. Is that they've got such small decimals. There's a couple in there where the probability of something happening, so it's like 0.0005. And then the probability of it not happening is the opposite of that. So you have to have 99.999, so many decimal places to get the right answer. So I'll walk through those excruciating ones. And again, don't worry too much. Remember, that's why I do it. All you have to get is, I was talking, how much, does anyone remember how much you have to get for full points on the homework? 85. Okay, so at 85 you get full points. If you get it to 93, that was random. We could make it 92 if you'd rather, but 90, then you get an extra credit point, right? And the same thing with the test. The test, 85% on the test is full points. So there's always a few that, but I know some students that, I want to get that 100%. And you'll keep working. It's good, but don't worry about it. 85 is there. 70 is even a good, good starting point. If you get 70, that opens up the test. You'll do fine in the course if you get 70s all the way through. And then you can always go back later, but bump it up. This weekend, I will also do the first grade update. So I wait for a while till everybody's kind of here, and in fact, and add it in and everything, so that I go from Math AS, I do an export from there, import it into a spreadsheet, then I have the spreadsheet do all the details of 70% is equal to this many points, and 85% is equal to this many points. And it's in a formula so that I'm not messing up, otherwise I would mess up, believe me. So it's in these formulas, and then it matches everybody up, and then I re-import it back into Canvas, and then you'll start seeing grades populate. The other thing you will see, let's say you did Chapter 8, you would see those points. At this point, what I do is, as of today, I'll start counting Chapter 9 as if it should be completed. So if you haven't, you might see some zeros there. Don't get freaked out. Someone will, because I get emails and, oh, I thought I could do this. And yes, you can still get it into me. It's just sort of a placeholder. It's just saying, according to the schedule, this should have been done, but it's not a problem if you get it done later on down there. You don't even have to work the course in the order I've got it set up. So, I've got some people who, oh, geometry, I love geometry. They'll jump to that. That's my last unit I do. So you can do it in any order. We just got all this time to get it complete. And what I'm doing is, it's just these Fridays we have certain topics presented. So for ones that you're struggling with, wait at least until the presentation. We'll go over it. If you're not here, it's being recorded, and so you can watch it later. And the nice thing is you can zip through the boring parts, fast forward or whatever, or the parts that aren't appropriate for what your questions are. And then you can also back up over something, because sometimes that's all it takes, is hearing and seeing something a second time or a third time, and then it starts to make sense. So that's why I'm doing this, and it's getting better as I go, I think. But we'll try to keep moving forward. So no particular questions. Okay. So what we'll do is today will probably be a little briefer. I'm going to switch back over to this screen now. As we get into lesson 10, unfortunately this thing doesn't come on anymore, so I have to look over here. Spring 2008. So we'll get into our course. So we're going to start into a 3-unit lesson on statistics. Today's lesson is primarily about how to set up a statistical study. So it's going to be a lot of vocabulary and processes. It's the least mathy topic we're going to do, and so for that reason, a lot of students kind of like it. So it's kind of this break. We've done this the probability with 8 and 9. That's kind of done. We incorporate some of the concepts into what we do in 10, 11, and 12, but not as deeply as we did in the probability. So 10 will be kind of math light. 11 will be a lot of graphing, how to describe data. That's where we'll also start doing some of the math, mean, median, mode, standard deviations. So there's some calculations. I'll also show you, I've got online calculators embedded in those things, because especially like standard deviation, we'll do one in class so you understand what is being calculated, but it's one of these tedious processes that you don't want to do by hand, because you'll probably make, at least when I do it, I make mistakes. So if I'm going to calculate a standard deviation, I get a standard deviation calculator that's built in there. So I'll show you how to use those apps. There's other apps you can use. There's a TI-84, but again, this class is about using technology to do the actual calculations, to come up with it. Ours is once we've got the number, what does it mean and how do we use it? And that's what we'll be doing, especially in 12, the normal distribution. So we'll see how by doing a few calculations, quick ones, or having them done for us, we can understand whether Johnny's doing well in school or whether he's a little bit behind, or, you know, these kind of things. Okay. And then we're into percentages, which kind of takes us back to chapter 8. If you went through the probability, percentages should fit right in there. And then we'll get into financial math, which is another valuable part of this. And again, the focus will be on how to use technology to get the calculations and understand what's going on. Okay, so let's go into the statistics. Make this bigger. Okay, so the place we always start, the textbook. Well, it's probably when I was a student, it was the last place I looked. Right? I checked the textbook at the last, right? Or maybe 2 years down the road, I'd look at the textbook. But there are some good things in here, and what you'll see is in my presentation today, the PowerPoint, I will actually, some of the PowerPoint slides, I've just taken screenshots out of some of this stuff. But this talks about populations and samples. I will talk about it, but you're getting it more auditory. This is for more visual learners and reading. So, you know, there's some boxes in here. You'll see these in the presentation. But as you see, there's not a lot of numbers and not a lot of formulas or stuff, maybe none so far. So I'm just kind of going through, yeah, just a lot of vocabulary. In fact, we'll check it, but I think in Canvas I've made a sort of a cheat sheet where I've took all these boxes and put them on one sheet so you could print that out. And I'll check to make sure it's there, because that's basically your questions are going to be, they're going to ask, what kind of bias is this? We'll talk about what bias is. And so your answer is going to be one of these listed here. So when you're doing your homework, it's nice to have this to say, well, what in the heck is self-study bias? Because I've got to decide whether this is something with self-study bias. So you'll be going back and forth and looking at the definitions more than anything in this unit, okay, and the processes. So I'm just kind of going through control groups. So again, it's a very verbal part of mathematics. So those of you who are more verbally oriented, you're going to enjoy today. Those who are more numerically We do have a little bit here. We'll talk about a frequency table at the end, and that's about as mathy as we get. Okay, so a little bit, you know, but look, doesn't this look like probability? And that's the other thing I wanted to show you is there are examples in here, and sometimes I get asked questions from, you know, from the homework, and oftentimes I'll come up, I go, you know, that problem was just like this, or it's close enough like it, and so I'll refer you back to this. I said, take a look at this, then tell me what part of it you don't understand. Because it's hard when someone sends a message, I don't understand where to start. And I said, well, look at the example first, and then tell me what part don't you understand. And then we can talk about it, okay? And a lot of these I've got examples in the practice problems I've done, some bar graph stuff. So you'll see as we get through this stuff, I want to keep going to the very end. We've got something called the practice problems. Here we are. No? Is this the practice problems? Those are you-try problems, I think. Here's the practice problems. So remember, I've done videos on probably half of these, either the evens or the odds. I can't remember which. But a lot of these practice problems are answered in videos. A lot of the online homework problems were taken from these, so they're very close to them. So again, if you're having difficulties with a particular problem, take a look at the practice problems, find the number, and then see if there's a video that was done for it. So what we're doing with this class is trying to help you learn how to research your way through content, because that's actually, again, while the math is valuable in itself, to a certain extent, it's more important that you know how to research it. Like my grandfather went to University of Washington in the 1920s, I think it was. His best piece of advice to me that I remember to my dad, he goes, you go to college to learn what book to look into. I guess we just need to update it. You go to college to learn which website to search now. But you're coming here to learn how to learn, or how to find the information you need when you need it. Okay, so the book, use it. It's there, and it's okay. I'm not going to get on your case, but you'll ask me something. I said, well, it's on page this of the book. Take a look, and so I'll remind you back because oh yeah, we got this textbook. Because people say, have you? I'll ask them, did you check the textbook? They go, oh, we have a textbook. I say, yes, we have a textbook. So it is in there, but it's online. So, you can buy it if you want from the bookstore, print it out if that's easier. And then we've got our class presentation. I'll pull that up, I think. Oh, here it is. Yeah, the reading summary, vocabulary list. So if you do that, you get a little, it's either a PDF or a Word document. I try to use PDFs as much as I can, but it looks like I use just a Word doc. So if you can't open the Word doc, just let me know. It opened it up over here. So this is a resource, again, and it's sort of the shortcut. If you don't want to read the textbook, at least print this out. This is from the textbook, so you are reading part of it. But it'll have all the definitions here. It's a little dense because it's no explanations, but this is something that would be good to have in front of you while you're working on the homework. Because, again, these are some of the answers. It's going to ask, what kind of study is this? Oh, was it a confound, what these are going to be parts of your answers. So it's, instead of formulas, you got a lot of definitions. Okay, so I've got that resource. And then we've got the practice problem videos. So you click on that. And again, it takes you to another website. And yeah, I did the odds here. It looks like most of the odds. Sometimes I did, like I've got 5 through 9 here. So again, when you have problems, check out these videos. It's me explaining it. You can also contact me, especially if some part of it wasn't making sense. But I do have a number of the practice problems worked out here. Okay, everything's going good. So that's that. Oh. Go back. Here we are. And then, of course, you've got the reading quiz, which is optional, but you get, what, 2 extra credit points? Maybe 3, I can't remember. We'll figure it out later, but if you do it, it's extra credit. You've got the homework. You have to get at least 70. As soon as you've got 70, then the test will open up. The test is just homework problems where you only get one try. You get to try a separate one, but if you either get it right or wrong, and then you could ask for a separate one. So even the test, you can do it multiple times, but it's set up that there's not as many resources. So when you're doing the homework, take some notes. Because when you go to the test, that's all the test is. It's exactly the same questions with the numbers randomized, so the numbers are different, but the questions are the same. In fact, even if you take screenshots, I hadn't thought of doing that, but take screenshots, save them off somewhere. And then when you got the test, that's the same as this. Okay? All right. And then there's these extra videos. I forgot about these. I was involved in part of this, of finding videos when we put this course together, I think 2 summers ago. And the first part was I did find some videos. Those are various online videos that help in general with the concepts. And then what I did last summer is I actually made videos that were from our practice problems. So, and what I'll do this summer, I don't know. Well, now I'm live streaming, so you're getting actually the course. But we'll keep on going back, and your input is vital. What do you find helpful? What do you find that wasn't as helpful? Let me know, and I can do more of the helpful stuff and less of the unhelpful stuff. And we'll just kind of keep making this better for students down the road. And sooner, if you let me know now, I can even make changes, especially to the streaming stuff. So those who are coming in or participating through the stream, your input is helpful. Okay, so there's stuff there. So by now, do you have a fairly good feel for the flow of each unit? Right? So, and I will follow the schedule, and I will do each Friday the presentation. So next Friday will be chapter 11, then 12. You're welcome to work ahead. You're welcome to be behind. It's just by the end, we have to have it all completed. And I know you've each got your separate lives, and you know when it's going to be busy, and maybe that's now, and you know when it's going to be slack, maybe that's later. But just work through, use the resources, get it completed. And you'll get the same points if you complete it today as if you complete it 2 months from today. You learn it, right? So, okay, so class presentation. Apologize, I haven't even looked at this, so I'm kind of probably surprised as you are. Let's see what we're learning today. I made it and I looked at it one time, but it's been a semester, right? But I remember this one. It's a lot of vocabulary. Let's see, is it opening? Come on. What are you doing? Oh, here it is. PowerPoints just take a little longer for some reason. So now I'll move this over. Actually, let's put that down. Slideshow. Come on. I'm not going to ask me for my oops. Now you got to remember a password. Oh, shoot. I wonder if it'll run without. I apologize, it's making me reset my password because I can't remember what it is.
Of course it is.
bear with us, those on the live stream. We are here. We didn't go away. Let's see. And now it's making me type in these funky characters that it's not accepting. Come on. What is wrong? Enter the characters. Okay, I'm going to need your guys' help. Let's see. That looks like a capital S, right? Capital Y, little k, little k. User ID you entered. Oh, user ID I entered doesn't exist. That's the problem. That's the other part. You just have to read the instructions. Okay, let's see what if I just close this out. Yeah, it's going to let me play anyway. Okay. We'll worry about that later. So fundamentals of statistics. How many of you are planning to go into a field that you think will involve some kind of research? What do we got?
I'm going to be going into naturopathic medicine after.
Naturopathic medicine, very good. What else? Anyone else want to offer? Social work, definitely. There's our programs working. We're continually doing research, gathering data, and then trying to see, are we getting better? Are we getting worse? What should we be doing? Okay. And those of us who might not necessarily be involved in the frontline research, we'll probably be consumers of research. Reading the journals. What's the best way to teach? Well, research says this, and again, research-based. That's what we're going to take a look at. So, there's two ways we use the word statistics. One way we use it is when we're talking about, one more thing. Where's my bag? Gotta connect my board, otherwise I can't draw on the. Not what we want to do. Let's go back. See, we're just doing a lot of vocabulary, so we'll see what would be a good color for today. The lighter colors work on the dark screen, but the darker colors work on the white part. It's your choice. What do you want to see? Red, orange, dark green?
Let's do dark green.
Let's do dark green, okay. Good, because the letters are already in blue, so let's see, where is this? Oh, there it is. It's not showing up.
It doesn't show it very well.
It doesn't. Okay, there we go. Let's clear it. All sorts of technical problems. Let's go with red. Red's always good, right? Okay, well, technology. Do this one more time. There we go. No, it could work. So statistics, when we say it, we're talking about the science. We're taking a statistics class. That's the science of collecting data, organizing it, and interpreting it. Okay, so that's the thing. And what we're going to focus on today is proper ways of collecting the data. Organizing towards the end, we do a little bit with frequency charts, but that'll, again, we'll be getting that into chapter 11, and 11 and 12 will focus on the interpreting of the data. Okay, but today's primarily about how do we collect the data, because if we don't collect it in a right way, it's meaningless. Garbage in, garbage out. So if we aren't careful how we collect the data, then the whole study is compromised. The second thing we use statistics for is we could also refer to the statistics. We might be talking about the data itself. Okay, I've got these statistics that prove this, that, or the other thing. So I'm using the word statistics for the data. I have data that proves this, that, or the other thing. And we'll talk about a lot of studies don't actually prove anything. They just make suggestions that there's a relationship between things, but they might. We're going to look to actually prove something. It takes some efforts. Okay. So two different uses for the word statistics. Let's go ahead and clear off the screen. We won't take a slideshot of. And since I'll take fewer slide shots because all of these are in the PowerPoint, which you have access to in MAT141 and such. So here's a couple concepts that go together. Population and sample. So these two go together, and a population is everything we're talking about. So we want to talk about college students, it would be all the college students who are in any college. But to do that study, we might take students from a particular college. That would be our sample. Okay, so the population is everybody who, they might not be involved in our study. In fact, a lot of times the population itself is not involved in the study. The large part of the population isn't. Only a small part is, and that's the sample. I like to compare it to, you go to the doctor, they need a sample of your blood, right? Most of the blood stays in your body and does what it's supposed to do. They take a little bit out and go test it to see whether you've got this virus or that virus or how's your cholesterol or something. So that's the idea from a sample. We're letting the organism live and keep on doing what it does, but we pull out a little bit of the sample and we test it and see if something's wrong or something's right, or sometimes whether we can make it better. Okay. Difference between population and sample. The sample comes from the population. But the population is a group of people, animals, things that we're interested in. Okay, when we do a study, we have to carefully define our population. So are we, when we say we're interested in college students, do we mean community college students or do we mean university students as well as college students? Some studies, any four-year institution or any of the 4 years. So we do 2 of the years, so they might include community colleges and universities. Some studies might separate those 2 schools. So population is a very important thing to be defined. And then the other part of a study is that we have what we call, these 2 are sort of related. Population parameters are the things we're trying to measure. Okay, so if I'm studying college students, maybe I might want to study the relationship between attendance in class and grades. Those are my population parameters, attendance and final grades. They're also become for the sample, they become sample statistics when I collect them. I will take attendance and I will take the final grades, and I will see if there's any relationship that people who attended more, did they get a better grade? Something like that. Or maybe it's the opposite. Who knows? Or maybe there is no relationship. And with the live streaming, you're attending, while not physically being here, you're still picking up the information. Okay. So, and we have online versions. So there's various ways to do it, but that's an idea, is the population parameters are the things we set. That's what we're interested in learning about. And then the sample statistics, those are the data we actually collect to try to get at those parameters. That kind of make sense so far? Okay. So again, for some of you this will be maybe more interesting than others. Some of you it might be the most boring thing you've ever done, but I'll try to intersperse it with a few jokes or something to keep us going. And I guess today it's going to be the technology problems that my mouse keeps disappearing. And there we go. Clear the screen. Go to the next slide. Okay, so here's a study. Here's the anatomy of a study. At the beginning, we identify our goals. What's our questions? What do we want to know about something? Who is our population? Again, that's where you have to define that carefully. Who are we really trying to study? And again, sometimes some studies, it's not just students in general. It might be a particular part of students. It might not be just children. It might be children with blue shoes on or something. Whatever it is, we get our population. Then what we do is once we've identified our population, we're going to draw a sample from that population. And the next set of the stuff is we're going to talk about the different ways to draw that sample. And depending upon how we draw that sample, we'll be able to make different inferences, or we might not be able to. Okay? And then from that sample, we do our study. We collect our data. We give them a treatment if that's involved. But some studies, it's not a treatment, it's just an observation. Okay, so we'll talk about those two. There's basically two different types of studies. One, we do a treatment. The other, we just observe what's happening. Okay. Then we do some math with it. And again, that's what we'll look at next week when we get to 11, the math of processing it. Make some recommendations, some conclusions, some inferences about, yes, if you come to class, you tend to get a better grade. Something like that. Okay? And then we start again. Let's test it again. Let's see, it worked on this group, but does it work on this other group? And is there something consistently going on? Okay, like with the flu season, right? There's flu shots. How effective were they? They have to test that kind of stuff. All the people who got the flu shot, how many people actually got the flu from it? They would collect all that kind of data. And they're continuously doing those kind of things to hopefully make next year's flu shot more beneficial, more protective. Okay, but that's a cycle of research. Okay, here's some common techniques, and again, I think the book has a couple others, so we'll talk about these because it's in the book, and then there's some others that the book has. So one is that's oftentimes used is called a simple random sample. I don't know why they call it simple, because it's not really that simple to do, but typically what we use is a computer program, randomized, like shuffling the deck of cards, and then randomly picking people or things, animals, whatever it is that we're sampling to be in our study. Could be like on a production line or something, could be objects. But the key part is that every sample of the same size has an equal chance of being selected. That's what makes it really random, is that the randomness has to have this equal opportunity to be chosen for the group. Okay, and then it's randomly chosen. It's not that I choose my favorites, it's just been randomly chosen, and each one has an equal chance of being chosen. Okay. Some studies use something called a convenience sample. And you see, it was very convenient. She's doing her homework up on the second floor, and she says, oh, let me get some data. Somebody's walking by. very convenient, right? So we see these type of methods used. Maybe they go to the shopping mall or something, and they're just, that's where a lot of people are at. Okay. Only thing you have to be careful about is if, you know, it might be very convenient to collect information about who does homework right outside the library. People are coming and going, but usually when people go to the library, what are they going for? Books to do their homework. So you're going to more likely to get people who are more likely doing their homework than if you were to stand in front of a restaurant or something, you know. So convenience sampling can have some bias depending upon where we're at. Okay. Systematic sampling, this oftentimes happens when we're measuring like production lines. We pull off every 5th item and we test it. Okay, what's the quality, or every 10th item, so systematically testing. I've also, I lived close to a mall when I was a kid in Oregon, and the only place they had air conditioning was at the mall, so I spent a lot of summers up hanging out at the mall. I was like what we call mall rats. That was me. And I could walk there from my house. But I'd see that they had also a survey or polling place, and they would ask people questions, and sometimes they get free gifts. So I was always walking up to them and saying, you know, trying to get the free gift, because, you know, 10-year-old kid would, you know, what do you know? But they would never take me, and then I started watching what they were doing. They would count people, and they would ask, and of course I didn't know it at that time, but what they were doing systematic sampling. And I wasn't the 10th person or the 5th person, whatever they were counting off, so that's why they couldn't take me. But so I tried to watch, okay, they did that one, how far should I come? But systematic sampling, it's a way of overcoming some biases, and you're not, because humans are very biased people. I guess we are people, but we have our biases. We like to, we're certain things we're attracted to. And whether we're attracted to something similar to us or different from us, we have our attractions. And if we don't do something like this, we're likely to get a sample that's very much of our own making, no matter what kind of a research we are. So that's one way. Another thing we need to consider too is this other type of sampling method. Sometimes we're testing something that might have a different effect on, say, men and women. Might have a different effect on children than older adults. It might have, you know, some different, you know, if we might be even testing cars or something, and trucks would test out differently than economy cars. So what we do is we stratify the group before we get the sample, and we try to make sure we get the same number in the sample. So if it's something like men and women, we would draw from a population of women, and we would try to make sure we get the same sample size from each of those groups. And we would sort of sample them almost as separate populations and make sure they're stratified, separated out. Run them through the same test maybe, but we would want to make sure our samples were equally, if we were looking for a difference between men and women in our study. Okay. If that wasn't part of our study, we don't need to stratify. But if we're looking for differences between groups, we need to consider the stratified method of making sure we have enough of each of our types. Okay. Okay. These are two that I added from the book. So the first time I did this, I didn't have them in there. But these are also from the book. There's also something called a cluster sampling. This we oftentimes do in education because we have nice little clusters that we call, what are you in right now? Classes. You're already been sampled and randomly, sort of, maybe not randomly, but we could kind of consider that there were so many math classes, bless you, you all had to take a math class, so somehow you ended in here. And so we could say, okay, Little Crow's class, this class, and that class, and kind of say that we're taking the whole cluster because we're going to ask your class to do things. And we have the Noel Levitt survey. How many of you might not know what it's called, but you've been in a class where they pass out these forms and they ask all your opinions about the college. What did you like? What did you not like? And those kind of things. We do that and we're using cluster sampling. They randomly choose classes, and then we're told, hey, Little Crow, you've got a couple classes you're going to have to bust out 50 minutes for us to do the survey in. And well, it's voluntary for you to do it. It's really not voluntary for me because they pay me, and if I don't do what they tell me to do, they stop paying me. And so I like to get paid, so I keep doing what I'm told. But we're going to look at this as sample that there's this other part we'll talk a little bit about, but that with research being done, it can impinge upon a person's rights as a human. So you always have the right to opt out of a study. Okay. Another way is voluntary response sampling. Is I says, okay, who wants to go test some ice cream? We got the ice cream over here, and who wants to be samplers? Okay, get lots of people maybe, but it's voluntary, right? And so that is a way to collect it. But again, it's got some things that when they look at the numbers of using a volunteer sample, it doesn't give us as strong evidence for something as if it was randomly chosen. Okay, but it can be done, and a lot of times it has to be done. We can't force people to do things. We can't just say, okay, all you people, you're going to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day for a couple of years, and let's see what happens to you. And this group, you're not going to smoke at all, and even if you want to smoke, we're not going to let you smoke. It just can't be done. So there's certain things that need to be done. Okay. So those are 2 other kinds of samplings. You'll see that in the homework. And again, if you print out that sheet, you'll see these definitions written down for you to work through. We're at 6 of 23. We doing okay? Always do a check. Eyes are still bright. Nobody's glazed over yet. So, okay, good. So now is a test time. Okay, you're conducting a survey of students in a school. You choose your sample by knocking on every 3rd door. What kind of sampling would that be? Don't say anything. Think about it for a minute, and then I'll... Okay, what kind of sampling that is? You go knocking on every 3rd door. Do you remember? Yeah, see, that's why you need the list. What? Systematic. Yeah, so it's always good to have the list. I've memorized it because I've done this. Yes. So again, but you'll see why you want the choosing every 3rd. Makes it a systematic sample. It does say this sample may be representative, because that's what we're trying to do. Is the sample should represent the rest of the population. It shouldn't just represent part of the population, but it should be representative as long as the students were randomly assigned to rooms. Now, if every 3rd room was the 1st graders and you were trying to get the whole school, you might be out of luck there. You're getting all 1st graders, and you want to sample everybody. But if it's sort of randomly, or maybe this wing is you go around the school every 3rd door, you could probably get a sample of everybody. Okay, all depends. But sometimes systematic sampling actually isn't very effective. If we're on a production line and we're sampling every 5th one, maybe the machine has a problem with every 4th one, but the 5th one's always perfect. So we're thinking we're doing great, but every 4th engine we make is just junk and has to be turned back. So, but that's the idea behind the systematic sampling. Good. Ready for another test? Okay. Where's the next one? To survey opinions on a new water line. A research firm randomly draws the addresses, it should be of, 200 homeowners from a public list of all homeowners. So what kind of sampling method is being used here? Simple random. And what tipped you off to that? The word randomly. Okay. So randomly, usually, there's not too many words that they can use for random. So when you see the word random, it's a random sample. Again, we'll click on this because to be random, it actually has to be not just random, but it has to be that everybody in the population has equal chance of being chosen. And that's what they'll say is as long as we assume that it's a public list of the 200 homeowners, which, when you buy a house and you're a homeowner, it's publicly recorded so that everyone is getting a chance. Okay, if we just knocked in who's home in the afternoon, people that are not home in the afternoon wouldn't have a chance to be chosen. So it could be representative, and it's random because everybody in the sample has a chance, or in the population has a chance to be chosen. Okay, make sense? Good. Bias. What is bias? What's a good definition? We know what it is, probably, but how do we define it? What is bias? I'm biased when I...
It's like a prejudice.
It's a prejudice, yeah. I go into the ice cream store. You got 31 flavors to choose from, or however many flavors. How many do you go for vanilla? I do. They have French vanilla. My dad always, you always get vanilla. Why don't you try something new? I said, okay, French vanilla. So that was I just like vanilla, okay? They said, you got all these other fruity choices. I said, but I like vanilla. That's what I want. So we have our biases. And again, it's, we are who we are. And a lot of times we like to be around people who look like us. There's, but we have to recognize when we're doing a study that we do have biases. And so we try to overcome them by systematically setting things up. We have people we'll favor. We have people we like. We have people that we are not as favorable for, right? We just don't, and they don't like us either, so that's okay. There's people that don't like, no matter what we are like, there's some people will like us and some people won't. It's just human nature. So we don't try to please everybody. But sampling bias is when in statistics specifically, it's something that makes the sample not representative. It's biased towards one thing or another. We got too many of this kind of in the study and not enough of that kind, whatever those are. Okay, and so it doesn't. So our results end up. It doesn't really tell us what the true story is. And these are some sources where that happens. So sampling bias itself makes the sample non-representative. And it might not be that, we're not saying we're bad people as researchers that we got this bad sample. It might not be our intention to do this, but these are the ways it can happen. Voluntary response bias. This is a problem getting volunteers. We get we make it sound exciting, and we're going to give you some vanilla ice cream, and all the people who like vanilla ice cream are going to volunteer for it, but the people who don't like vanilla, why would I want to go do a study, and I hate vanilla ice cream, right? So we can get biases that way by somehow having a voluntary sample, and then maybe our offer, for extra credit or whatever, isn't likely for some others. Other types of studies, self-study, self-interest study. What do you think that could be? Anyone have an example for a self-interest study and why that might cause a problem? Why it might cause some bias?
When you're so invested in the subject that you're going to almost kind of like persuade the results to be what you want them to be.
There we go. Or we choose the sample, not to get too politically charged, but why not? Gun control. And we have the NRA doing the study. And, the NRA is National Rifle Association. So I would say that would probably lead to some kind of bias. Now people, don't say anything bad against gun owners, okay? So that's, those but whatever side you're on, there's probably going to be some bias. Just as there would be on the other side, and I don't know what organization is fighting gun, for strong gun controls against the NRA or something. But either end of the perspective on an issue, if they're doing a study, we always question it. I mean, there might be some self-interest that you really want to show that guns are either good for society or bad for society, and you bring that bias into your study somehow, and it affects the sample that you end up choosing. Okay. Response bias. Or you have a restaurant and you get these reviews, oh, this is the best food in the world, right? Well, the person that says it was not good, you throw that out or something. But so self-interest study, those become a problem. Response bias comes from, and there's these next ones are various types of response bias, but the response bias is when we have a survey or something and the people our sample doesn't give honest answers. And it's not that they're trying to lie to us, or sometimes they are, but there might be reasons why we don't get the truth. And here's one, the perceived lack of, could someone say that word for me?
Anonymity.
Thank you. I just say not enough privacy. That's what I go with. Right. Because that anonymity, I don't quite say it right, but it's too many somethings in there. But yes, if you're asked in front of everybody and, I don't know, I'll give you the answer you want, or I'll give you the answer that people aren't good, but I might not give what I really think is the answer, what I feel. You also get non-response bias. So if you've got a survey, again, people have the option to answer or not answer, and so if there's some questions that are not being answered, that can cause a bias in the study. So they refuse to participate in certain parts of the study. Then the study doesn't have a good output. And then finally, on surveys, you could have loaded questions. And you're going to see in the homework, there's a few examples of this, of loaded questions which kind of try to lead you to the answer. Okay? It kind of, and if there's adjectives on something, like I think there's one on loud, annoying rock music being played in stores. Well, isn't that kind of leading? First of all, loud, annoying, and maybe rock. So it's a leading question. Okay. Should rock music be played at the stores? Well, that's maybe a little less leading. But loud, annoying rock. You're telling the people this is bad stuff. Please say, no. So leading questions, loaded questions. Okay. And as you can see, this comes right out of the textbook. So we have looked at the textbook. We can say we've looked at the textbook. Okay, so I'm on your side. Okay. So there'll be some questions asking about that. And then the next step is there's really only two types of statistical studies. They break down to two types. One is observational, the other is an experiment. And the key difference between the two, anybody?
You observe how people act.
Yeah. Observational, you observe. Experiment, you experiment, you treat. There has to be a treatment. Okay. Now, observational, it does oftentimes involve some sort of a measurement. So we might be, and to measure something, you're kind of getting in there and doing something, but you're not treating, you're not giving a treatment that you expect to affect the measurements. Okay. So it's just simply observational. And then experiments, we're actually doing a treatment, and typically with an experiment group, what we try to do is have two samples, one called a control, which we get to next, and one a treatment group, so that we can see here's a group that nothing was done to, what did they have to do, here's the one that received the treatment, was there any difference? Okay. So those are the two types. Observational studies oftentimes can be made to look like an experiment, and they did this with tobacco, cigarette smoking, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. What they did is they didn't make groups and say you smoke 2 packs and you don't smoke 2 packs and you smoke 1 pack a day, but they had people volunteering to smoke 2 packs a day. Some volunteered to smoke a pack a day. Some volunteered not to be non-smokers. And that's how they lived their life. What they did is they would collect that data. So they would send out surveys, and then they would collect health data and see if there was differences. And so, like the issue of tobacco use is a study, a long-term study that was done. It's actually an observational study. Now with rats and stuff, they say it's okay to do with animals. They would actually maybe inject them with nicotine and see the effects of nicotine. That they would do the experiment on animals, but it was deemed, and still rightly so, unethical to do it on humans. I would also question whether it was really ethical to do it on the animals either, but I don't have any red paint, or won't go overthrowing any labs, but we got a question is, some things we can tell have negative effects, and so what do we do with it? Okay, so observational experimental studies. So then in the experimental group, or experimental studies, there's 2 types of groups. And we kind of talked about it. Oh, that's somebody else's. Is that,
right? I don't know. I don't think it's...
I think it was someone from the tutor class, because it was there earlier. And I was going. So anyway, we can have some fun. Maybe we'll call Japan or something. Yeah, one of my friends left his, the other professors left his phone in his office, and I says, He says, I'll come get it tomorrow. I says, oh, good, I can make some international calls.
International calls for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, long distance is all free anymore, right?
Right.
But international, that's what, okay, no, we'll do it. So treatment group is the one that receives a treatment. Okay. Control group does not receive a treatment. Okay, they're just going to keep on about their lives. There's one in the homework, and I'll kind of highlight this to you, where there's a treatment of people who are receiving a medication on a regular basis, and then some get the new one. Well, why the other ones you don't want to cut them off of the old medication, so they're actually
The control group.
they're actually a control group, even though they continue to get quote a treatment, but it's the one that they've always been getting. It's the treatment group is the one that's getting the new treatment. So it's I thought, students will argue with me, well, they're both getting treatments. I said, yes, but would it be ethical to cut somebody off their meds? Especially, and I can't remember what it was about, but it's, probably keeping them alive. You don't want to cut them off, but you might want to treat them with something new to see if there's something that works better. Okay, control group, nothing's being done to them, pretty much. Sometimes we do a fake thing to them. We'll talk about that next because of the psychological issues. But it is important that both the control and the treatment group are as similar as possible. Okay, they're different people or different, but they need to be as similar as possible so that we can really say the treatment was what made the difference. Not that this group was healthier and this group was, they got to be about the same. Okay. And then anyone in psychology? Yeah, probably not, because you'd be in the other math classes. You need Math 150 for psychology. But if you looked at psychology, there's a psychological effect. Sometimes when we think we're being treated, we get better, whether or not we were given an effective medicine or not. So one of the ways to get past that is...
Are they trying to find their phone?
Probably. Let's see. Oh, they're making arrangements for a happy hour. So we should all show up.
We should show up.
Roaring Forward at 5:30. It is free. So, something called the placebo which is a fake treatment. Oftentimes it's with medicines, they give them a fake pill that looks just like the other pill, but it doesn't have the ingredients in it. If everyone's getting a shot, you get a shot, but it's got water in it, so it doesn't really do anything. But you think, hey, I got this shot, it's going to, to make me better, going to keep me from getting sick. But you might have been the one that got the fake stuff. Because the placebo effect is that psychologically, when you think you got a treatment, sometimes your mind will make you better, or your mind will do certain things to you. And so there's this difference. And so they make by doing this, they're able to say, well, you were in the control group, but some of the control group gets better or loses weight, or whatever it is that the treatment group was supposed to do. They sort of just do it on their own. So this helps measure that those in the treatment group actually got better because of the treatment, not just because they were getting the treatment. And we can do a baseline with the control group. So that's a placebo thing. So there's a few questions in the homework about placebos, and does this one have a placebo or does it not? And again, it only applies to experimental studies. Along with this, again, all trying to get rid of as much bias as we can. So the placebo kind of helps control for the psychological effect that we're getting treatment, someone's paying attention to us, so we just change that way. The other thing that can happen...
They're calling you now.
Yeah, well, they are. San Antonio, Texas. Let's see. Should we answer? Sorry.
You can turn it so it doesn't buzz.
I can. Yeah, maybe. Well, let's see.
Eventually, you probably want to answer it. It's
Yeah, it
probably
might be the guy with
frantically looking for their phone.
Yeah. Carried off.
Right, they're using somebody's Texas phone number.
Do not disturb.
Okay, good. It'll go down, and I think I've
It's over for this person now. They're not going to find their phone.
You need to call it the FBI to undo the code or something. Thank you.
Let's do a contest.
Yes.
Whoever gets the best group.
Okay, so blinding is to let someone not know they're in this, not know. So there's one type of blinding which is single blind, and that's the participants don't know whether they're in the control group or the experimental group. And that's sometimes what the placebo is used for, is everybody's getting the shot, everybody's taking a pill, whatever it is, everybody's getting some kind of a treatment, so they don't know, as far as they think they're getting a treatment. They're blind to the fact that they are actually in the control group, that they're actually just getting water injected into their veins or a sugar pill or something. So that's single blinding, when the participants don't know which group they're in. There's times when you might want them to know which group they're in, especially if it's a new drug, because you want them to look for side effects. You can sometimes still do that with a placebo, but when the people who took the fake stuff get the side effects, that's, But sometimes we need to let them know, but sometimes it's better that they don't know, okay? There's another one, it's called double blinding, where the researchers also do not know who's in the control group and who's not, who's really getting the treatment. And the reason for this is there's some studies where you're also looking for maybe, what do they call these, qualitative differences. So let's say we're doing a study on anger management. How do we measure whether anger management works or not?
First get somebody angry.
Yeah, you get some, but then how do we on a scale of 1 to 10, how do we tell how somebody's angrier? It's somewhat subjective, isn't it? And so when we have something that's a subjective measure, the researchers might be biased one way or the other. Oh, they were in the treatment group. And so subjectively, I'm going to rate them better than someone who I know was in the control group. And again, the researchers are actually involved in some kind of subjective measurement. It's better that they just don't know. Okay. And sometimes I remember in teaching or taught this way, grade the papers, don't look at the names, So, I always look at the names, but okay, these are my favorites. No, everyone's my favorite, so it's okay I think it's okay. But sometimes, yeah, you want to do that. You want to grade things, and sometimes I'll do that, and I go, wow, this person's really good. Oh, wow, great. Or this person, So sometimes you're surprised, but you need to do that sometimes, is have the researchers blinded. So double blind because the participants don't know and the researchers don't know. Somebody in the back room will use these numbers, and then they know who was in which group, and it all gets done, but it's done in the back rooms where the bias is less likely to be. Okay? So you'll get a couple questions. And again, they're asking you, they'll tell you, you have to read through it. Was this study single blind, double blind, or no blind? Did it have a placebo? Those kind of things. That's the kind of questions you get here. Now this last one here on studies is the case control study. This is the one really referring to how cigarette smoking was studied because they used a case control. Okay, it was actually observational study, but they were able to make it look like an experiment. Just as if somebody, there was people who volunteered to smoke 2 packs a day. That was, my dad he was a very heavy smoker for a while. He got pneumonia. He kept trying to quit, but it was pneumonia that got him to quit because he couldn't smoke for 2 weeks. And then he sat out of bed and he was going to light up again because, that's what he did. And he goes, wait, I think I've actually quit this time, because he couldn't smoke for 2 weeks. And he did. He was like in his early 30s when that happened. But I also know a guy I worked with who was, it was like before one would end, he'd have his next one lit up, and his hands were always shaking. It was an insurance business, so it was a stressful place anyway. But his desk was, it always had a cigarette going. So there was people who, tested all the spectrum of cigarette use, from those who never used it to those who did it, and secondhand smoke and all that, and that's how they do it. So participants, they were called cases, okay? And those who did not engage were called the control. So the non-smokers were the control group. Let's see how this non-smokers do. And the smokers. This is actually how they found out about secondhand smoke, is because some in the control group were having the same symptoms and sometimes worse symptoms than those who were in the case group of those who were smoking. And they took a little deeper look and they said, you know, secondhand smoke, actually that's the worst part because you don't get the filter. And so there's all this stuff about secondhand smoke, and that's why they started outlawing smoking in public places, because they realized that it has an effect on those who don't want to be, chose not to do it, but were becoming smokers because of other people's choices. Okay, and again, you choose what to do, but that's one example of a case control study. And it makes an observational study look like an experiment. Okay, so here's the time for some math. So, with every study, there is some kind of an error. And so there's this thing called a margin of error. So what we do is we know there's going to be error, and there's various ways to kind of figure out where those errors creep in. And so what they do is, if we can somehow calculate what our margin of error is, we subtract it and add it from what our results are. So let's say, let's make something up. Say our results said we had a 75% increase in some measured thing. People got better 75% faster from taking our little cold pill, whatever, some medicine we gave them. But we realized we had a margin of error in our measuring of plus or minus 5%. So we even can measure the amount of error we have. So what do our results really say? Not 75%, 80, or 70. So it says that so every study you read, don't focus too much necessarily on the results. They'll give you a number, but watch for that margin of error. It's really 70 to 80% is what we're expecting here, not 75% on the not. And again, the smaller we can make our margin of error, the more accurate our study was.
How do they determine the margin of error?
Magic. Yeah, it's all. I think that's about as close as like they wave it along. Sometimes it seems random. They have little manuals that say, well, if you take this kind of a sample, it has a lower, and they will quantify those. But there was somebody quantifying those things, and whether it's really all that accurate or not, I'm not that sure. But they do use scientific methods, which doesn't make it always correct. But they have manuals, and they say, yeah, if your sample was taken this way, and if your sample size was this big versus that big, you can actually calculate that margin of error. And a lot of the margin of error is based on sample size. But then also it depends on what you're measuring. You could also say, if we pick up a ruler, it's only got so much accuracy. And so we can actually measure how much inaccuracy we have if we're physically measuring something. And then they'll do when you set up a study, there's so much to set up. They'll even do practice with the people who are making the measurements, and they'll see this group. They'll do maybe 5 different measurements, and then they'll compare it, all measuring the same thing, and then they're able to see, well, we've got this variation of say 5%. There's our sample. There's our measure of error. We can only measure it this accurately, because if I have George measure it and Susie measure it and Frida measure it, and we put that all together, and they all got slightly different. They're close, but all are a little bit off. That's how they can do it as well. So, testing the test, right? So, but yeah, sometimes you read through it, and it's almost like, I'll be honest, you'll even read it, and they'll say, and we thought it was about a 5% error, so that's what we used. Okay, I really trust that study, huh? But the ones that say that they tested out their margin of error are, again, a little more believable. Okay, but that's all the margin of error is. It's a plus or minus, saying we know we made some mistakes and we think it's about 5%, or we've measured it and we know it's pretty close to 5%, and that gives us our margin of error. Okay. 14 and 23. Let's keep going. Okay. Quantitative and qualitative. Which one of these has a letter N in it?
Fine.
When you look at the word number, what do you know it starts with? Yeah. So quantitative, the one with the end, is number measurements. Not just number measurements, but number measurements that can be calculated with. Our friend here with the phone actually comes into our study. Our telephone number is quantitative data. They're numbers, but can you take your phone number and my phone number, add them together and divide by 2 and get anything meaningful? Probably not. You could even add all the digits of your phone number. You get a number, but is that meaningful? No. So actually phone numbers are more of a label. When you put it in, it'll label, it tells us who that call goes to. It tells us the location. It's really a label rather than a number. So sometimes you might see some things that have numbers involved, but they're not necessarily numerical data. They're actually qualitative, a quality, right? And so this is, but certainly non-numerical, such as colors. Like what color shirt are you wearing today? We collect that data. A lot of black shirts, dark blue shirts, green shirts, light shirts. But that's all qualitative data. We can't add that data together and divide by something and get an average. We can only get qualitative. So these are 2 different types of research studies that can be done depending upon how they collect their data and the different types. Yes?
Or like, if we were like counting shirts and we said there are 3 black shirts and 2 red shirts, what is that called?
3 black, 2 red or something. That's good. Sometimes we take these numbers and we'll average it. We know there's 5 individuals, so that's all we can say. But the numbers, the 3 is actually not the data. The 3 is describing the data that we had 3 shirts that were black. So we have to be careful, and you'll see. It's actually, it leads us right into the next one. The 3 is called the frequency, because we're going to do frequency charts. Okay. But frequencies can also be used in quantitative data. I mean, if we ask everybody's age, there could be 3 people that were 21 in here. But that 21 is a quantitative number. It is a count of how many years you've been on the earth. Whereas black is just a quality. It's so it's a number of shirts. So we got to be careful, because I've seen some of the questions will have this stuff and people will start using these numbers over here, the frequencies, and averaging them like they were data, but they're not really data. They're how many datas we have of each one. Okay. So whenever we have qualitative, there's very little math we can actually do with them.
Okay.
We can make charts that show which one. We'll see. In this case, this is actually getting into a little bit for 11 for next week. But we will usually use the mode as the average. And in this case, we would say the mode is black. Okay. The mode is what occurs the most. And on this question, there's some question like this, and I've seen people put the mode as 3. But it's not. The mode is not 3. The mode is black. It's black because there are 3 black shirts, and there's only 2 of the others. It's the one that happened the most. But the mode itself is the piece of data. So, and again, we'll get a little bit more into that later as we keep moving along. But there'll be questions about qualitative, quantitative. Oh, good. We'll do this one, and I think a lot of the slides are actually for next week anyway. 1140, where's my, keep seeing my mouse here. So should you believe a study? This is just a real quick things that you should go over. What should you consider? Scroll, please. So hopefully in looking at a study, you can identify what is their goal, what's the population, and what's the type of study. Is it observational, is it experimental? If they don't tell you these things, then I would, because you'll see advertisements and they just throw these things at you and they'll say a double-blind study, our research shows. Well, what was your research? Okay, so research has to be published. We have to have this information at a minimum. What else we need to know is the source. Again, self-interest study. Is it the drug company that's doing its own study and says our drugs are really good, they work really well, and they should cost a lot of money, and that's why you should pay a lot. Consider the source. So sometimes we want an outside source. Look for bias in the sample. And again, you have to read through the study, and they have to tell you how did they get their sample. If they don't, you can't tell much about it, so you're not going to trust much. But that's how you as a researcher, you look at different studies. They have to give you this information. Maybe it was a convenience sample. Again, it's not saying that the researchers are bad, but maybe it was a convenience sample. They just, hey, I had 3 kids in the room, so I put them to task. I tested them. Okay. Look for problems in defining or measuring the variables of interest. So sometimes, again, a measurement of anger management. How do we really measure anger? Because that's something that's situational as well. And so maybe there's problems with measuring it. So if we can't measure it very accurately, maybe the study can't be done very accurately. There's issues with that. There's also all these things that we do measure, like with psychological things. We measure them with surveys, but that's all what's called self-report. And again, how accurate do people really report how they feel? They think they might feel this way, but have you ever one day thought you were really happy and then you look back and say, man, I was really unhappy that day? Or vice versa. You thought you were unhappy and then yeah, that was the best day of my life. I don't know. So sometimes we're not in touch with ourselves. So that's a possibility. Confounding variables, we'll just sort of touch on this a little bit, but confounding variables are things that could affect the outcome. So if we're growing plants and we're testing the effect of a fertilizer, we have to make sure things like light and water are the same, because those are confounding variables. If one group was getting more sunlight, that will confound our study. Well, yeah, they grew a lot. Was it because they got the fertilizer? Well, maybe it was because they were closer to the window. I think I read one of these in one of my classes. They put the ones with the growth fertilizer next to the window. They grew really big. It looked like their fertilizer was great, but they really found out when they repeated the study, it was just because they were close to the window, got more light. Okay. Consider the setting and wording in the surveys. Again, this is like the bias, the leading questions. And another bias can sometimes happen is the order you put questions in. Sometimes if you ask this question first and this one second, it will influence the answers. And so if you do things in different orders, it sometimes makes a difference. All these things have to be considered. Again, most studies, when they're published, if they have a survey, they will publish the survey along with the study. So you can see this is what they were asking. You can say, oh, there's a leading question there. That's why everybody answered no, or everybody answered yes. Or when they were doing it, people didn't feel they had privacy. That's that lack of anonymity. Yeah, that thing. So I always have to slow down for that word. Then check the results. Even the results, were they presented fairly, or they biased in one way or the other? And then stand back and put it all together. Say, is this study really going to be helpful in helping me decide about things I want to do, or did it really prove anything? Should I try this? Okay. And again, in the public domain, we get fed with a lot of quote research and studies and summaries of research and studies that says this research says 75% of this happens, and we get to the place where sometimes we just accept it. And there's people that are making those things up, sometimes on purpose making them up. And there's people that are doing research, but they have some issues with the research because of sample and all those kind of things. So the better we look at it, the better we'll be able to digest it. Okay. I think we do have a little bit on frequency tables in this one, so I'm going to introduce a few things, and then this is, again, the mathy part of it. It's dealing with numbers, but it's only dealing with really counting for the most part. Okay? We're not going to do any more complicated. Actually, counting and dividing. So, frequency table is simply like our question we had on shirts, black shirts and red shirts. We count how many things are in each of the categories. So first we're talking about categorical data, colors of shirts, colors of cars, those kind of things, putting age groups, we could do it, all sorts of things. And then we're counting how many of each is in that category, so the frequency. A relative frequency, what you want to put with that word is percent. So we do it as a percentage of the group. So if we add all the relative frequencies together, how much should we get?
100%?
100%.
That's a trick question.
Exactly. So all the data together has always got to equal 100% because that's everything. And so we're got 5% red shirts, 10% black shirts, all this, so we can do it by percentages as well as frequency. Percentages are helpful because it helps us look at one sample that might be smaller than a larger sample. There might be two different sample sizes, but if we talk in terms of percentage, we can relate them to one another. When we talk in amounts, we had 2 red shirts. Well, this other group might have had 10 red shirts, but percentage-wise, that might be the same. Okay, so percentages help us to talk about different groups easier. And then finally, sometimes they'll use this, a cumulative frequency. So oftentimes this is like on grade reports. So how many got A's, how many got B's, how many got C's, so that you can look and then you can look at the total as it goes down. And I'll show you an example of that. Okay, so it's just kind of a running total is another word for cumulative frequency. Okay. So here's an example. We start with some raw data up here, and then we're going to put it in a frequency table. So they're breaking it down, scores between 95 and 99. Let's see, and you look up here. Oh, here's a 98. Anything else? No, that's the only one that's between 95 and 98. So there's one of those. We could cross it off. And then we just keep going, 90 to 94. Again, it's just the tedious part. Well, here's a 94. Let's see. Did I miss anything?
91.
Oh, there it is, 91. See, that's the hard part. You could miss them. So those two together, that's the 2 pieces of data. Okay, so I counted those, that frequency. We'll count those out. And notice over here I have a cumulative frequency. 1 plus 2 equals 3. So I've taken care of 3 pieces of data. And then I go to 85 to 89. We won't do all of these, but 85, well, that's 80. Oh,
No.
85 to 89, sorry. We'll come back to you later. 85, oh, 86 is in the 85 to 89 group. Here's an 88 and another 88. So it looks like 3 pieces of data in the 85 to 89, and that's that 3 right there. Okay, you cross it out, and you just kind of keep going through. So you're putting your data into these categories. You're getting the frequencies, and you do that for each of them. And if you did that, you'd see that we've got all our 20 accounted for. Since we have 20 items, the way we get the relative frequency for the first one, since there's one thing, 1 out of 20, we take 1 divided by 20, which is 0.05, times 100 gives you 5%. Okay, so hopefully this should be meaningful after doing chapter 8 on probability. I had you do this a lot. We got fractions, divided them, turned them to decimals, multiply the decimals times 100 to get a percentage. So that's all we're doing here. With this one, there's 2, so there's 2 out of 20, 2 divided by 20. You plug it in your calculator, you get 0.10. Multiply by 100, you get 10%. This one we do what? 3 divided by what? 20. We're always divided by 20, which is coming right here from the total. And you notice on the cumulative frequency, the last one counted should have all that's there. Okay. And again, we're just going through 3 divided by 20, 7 divided by 20, and 4 divided by 20. And that gives us those values, those percentages. And I think there's 1 or 2 activities in the homework. That's what you'll have to do. You'll have to set up the frequency table. You'll have to set up the relative frequency, and that's good. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot we have a guest speaker today. You want to go before or after?
Before or after what?
Class. You want to go with everybody still here? I could do 11:40. Well, we got till 11:40.
We got till 11:40.
Okay, we'll get you. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get you in. So she's finished. Actually, finished her final project already, and I want to see if I get to the right place. I want to encourage you. You can start working on that final project actually anytime. So, like I said, you can do this course in any order. So, if you want to start working on the final project, the directions are there. They were in there in Canvas,
Yeah.
right? So
There.
yeah, so that they tell you you'll do a presentation, 4 to 6 minutes, and all you have to do is you have to talk about how math is used in some topic, and then you have to have a written part to that. So that's half of the grade. The other half is you write about it. It can be the same topic. It could be sort of the same. It's just the written version of what you put in your presentation. And I've always encouraged students to do it early. I've never had anyone do it quite this early. I've had someone do it like 1 or 2 weeks before, but it's always good to get one started because then maybe others will get started. Yeah, you can work on that part. And I don't know what that's 250 points or something. That's a big
It's
chunk
a
of the
lot.
grade. So you get that done first, and then you can just sit back and work through these chapters, and you'll be good. Okay. So bar charts, again, frequency. So here the number of A's is 4, so we just do a bar chart. So this is just a way to display it. But we can also list it as a percentage. So it's 4, but it's also 16%. So the bar chart itself is showing both percentages and frequency. And then over in the circle graph, a circle represents a whole, so the whole circle is 100%, and then they've divided it up into the different percentages just to kind of show that. Okay, and just give a graphical look at the data. You won't actually have to create them. Microsoft Excel does a good job if you need to use them, and there's a class that will teach you how to do that. But what you'll have to be able to do is just to be able to pull data from it. Okay. 2 more slides. Line charts, and we're going to skip this because we don't do time series. I think I've got one more, the histogram. Difference between a histogram and a bar chart. A histogram, what makes a difference is the bars are right next to each other. So it's basically using numerical data on both. It's just called a histogram when both sets are numerical data. And so you notice there's no spacing between the bars. And typically, the lower half, so this 75, so this is the question that comes up. You have to, it could be either way, but if I had a score of 75, which of these bars do you think it would be in? Couldn't be in both, could it? I mean, you got to count it. It's either in the lower bar or the upper bar. Usually, again, it could be, if they stated differently, it would be counted in as the bottom of the next bar. So 75, if I had a score of 75, it would be in with these 7, not in with these 4. So these 4 is really saying these are scores from 70 to 74. Okay, but there is a question on the homework that's like that. It will tell you that, and it'll say what's the highest it could be. And again, notice this bottom bar, 75 doesn't count. The 75 counts in the next one. So that'll help you with that one. And we don't have anything on line charts, but line charts are just a histogram, as you can see, with the tops connected. Basically put dots here. In the middle of the bar, and then they connect the dots and they erase the histogram. The problem with them is sometimes we follow the line and we think, oh, 70, that there must have been 3 that got 70, but that's not what it's indicating. It's just indicating a general trend. So I don't like line charts very much because I find them misleading. I would rather just see the histogram because that's really what they are, is they're a converted histogram. Okay. That's all I got today. So you've got a PowerPoint?
I do.
You got time to...
We have 5 minutes. I don't know if I have enough time, but if people want to block out because you have other places to go,
Yeah.
then I'm not opposed.
Okay. And I want to keep the live streaming going, so if you want to watch it later, it'll be on the live stream. But we're going to have a sample of what you could do for a project. And... oh, thank you. Yeah, we better do that. How about, what would be our good word of the day?
Final.
Final? Okay, final project. We'll write it down. Final. That'll be our word of the day. It's at the end of the video or somewhere in there. I'll take a picture of that one and post it. So even if you just go in and to look at the data.
Just word of the day on Canvas.
It's, yeah, the quizzes go, yeah, it'll be right underneath the, where is that? We'll just put it there. Actually, I think it'll be easier if I take this thing out.
No.
Okay.
You have so much technology that I
I
don't
know.
know about.
I'll get you set up so all you have to do is click. Let's see, go over here. Where am I? There we go. So where's your, do you have a, okay, great. I'm going to take it off so that, and yes, you're welcome to stay or leave. Oops, just lost the live stream. There we go. Okay. Then I think there, and then you could just click on this, and it's a wireless mouse, so it can move around. And
Okay, thank you.
My name's Faith King, and I was really stumped on trying to figure out, Mr. Lucro was like, this, had somebody do it on this great math scheme because they built things, and I'm like, I don't do anything that's fancy at all whenever it comes to math. Nothing, okay? But I probably do something that's unusual to most people, but I am 46, so this is everyday math. This is what I do every day of my life, which most people probably don't have to do this. So this is my mom's cheat sheet I had to make her because I literally am the family financial assistant. I do everything I live with my mom. My 32-year-old brother lives next door. My daughter also lives in the same complex. She's 26. And then my 34-year-old brother lives down the road. I'm my mom's and my brother's, 34-year-old brothers, I'm their authorized representative for their disability or DES or both. Okay, so I'm obviously This I had to make for my mom. I'm sorry if it's not really clear because I just took a picture of the little notebook thing that I give her. These are all of her credit cards, and I have to make sure and tell her exactly how much she needs to pay off right now because of what she owes to what she pays off, and what she needs to keep it at to keep it under 35. I think I put it at 25%, so she was under the 30% mark so that her credit is building instead of hurting her credit because she doesn't know. She's got like, you know, all this credit debt, and I'm like, okay, your credit's going down, so let's fix this. Now, the other thing with my mom is, well, this is my home page on my Apple phone, okay? The Chase Bank is not mine, it's my mother's. I am the one who takes care of everything in her bank accounts. Her Chase Bank, that's hers. Her Bank of America, that's hers. The Merrick is hers. So the U.S. Bank and the Capital One is mine. So that's something that I have just on all the apps on my phone. And those aren't the only ones that I particularly deal with. So then we'll go on. And I really couldn't get a good picture of this. It was horrible how I did it. But you can see that there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tabs open on my home computer because I am doing all of my mom's stuff. Okay, so I've got her Merrick up, I've got her Capital One up, I've got her Walmart, I've got her Chase, I've got her Bank of America, and I'm trying to go in and figure out everything that she needs to do, what she needs to pay, what she's messed up on, or whatever it is. I do all of it. So then I'll move on. This is funny because I said I'm the financial advisor of everybody. So this is my brother's taxes because I do everybody's taxes. Okay? This is my life, and I do it every day. So this is my brother's taxes. I've done this January 14th for him. You can see that the person who paid this bill is Faith King. That's me. Okay, so we have this fantastic thing in our family that we figured out, and if nobody knows about it, it's called Messenger Pay. Fantastic. Okay, it costs nothing. This is just this is my daughter. I was teaching her how to use it. My daughter's 26. I'm teaching my daughter how to use the Messenger Pay. It's hooked up to your bank account. It immediately goes in your bank account or comes out of your bank account immediately. So that's her sending me money, and or vice versa, teaching her how. Taught my mom how. This is funny because this is your Messenger account. She's sending me money. Dolores sent you money. That's me. This happens all day long, every day, because I'm doing everybody's everything. I can't even tell you how many different things that I do within my family financially. This is what it looks like. It's money raining. This is my brother. It doesn't matter what it is because I'd be like, okay, well, all right, I got everybody's Renaissance tickets. There's 6 of us. Da da da. Here's what you owe me. I'll send out a multi-text. This is what's going on here. I do everything. I'm the planner. So I don't know what we were doing this day, but you could see 9267. This is Messenger, so you just type it in. I'm sending this person this much money. That's to me. And then over on the other side, you could see the $300 because he, as soon as I paid his TurboTax, he had to send me the money through Messenger to pay me back. And this is my brother Charlie, my other brother, and he'll see. Charles sent you $6.50 for Subway because I bought him Subway. Said, well, you owe me $6.50. Boom, send it. Charles sent you $24.07 for a payment because he owed me money. Everybody kind of owes me money. Charles sent you this for your January bill. This is our phone bill. I am the person. We have 5 lines on one phone account. I make sure how much the account is, and I text everybody how much it is every month. If it's changed at all, everybody sends me their money in Messenger. $41 for the phone bill. This is $50 for the credit card because my brother used my credit card, so it owes me money. So I take care of everybody's financial situations. This is my Amazon because I have the Amazon account. I'm the one that does all the purchases, returns, or everything. It's whether or not you have your card on my account. This is my brother. This is me. This is my Aunt Frida. This is my other brother Jimmy. And you can't see all of it. My daughter's got one on there, and then there's a couple of other things on there, but we all got a couple of cards. If there's something wrong with something that has to be returned, I do it. I mean, I do everything. It's my account. Amazon Prime, if you're a student, 6 months, first 6 months is free, and that's only $50 a year for Amazon Prime, if anybody didn't know. But that's because I find out all the deals for everything. I have passion about this because it literally is my life. It kind of gives me, people actually don't realize what I do, and I do too much, honestly. So it causes, on top of my full-time school schedule, I have a full-time accounting business that I do not get paid for at all. But I do it because it's my family and I love them. But so I would say, if we're going to Disneyland, I set up everything. Everybody gets told how much they got to pay because I've already set it up. I need this much money from you. I just do this on a daily basis for everything, whether it's the movies, trip or something, or like we're going to the Renaissance Festival. I just sent out the multi-tests to everybody last night. This is how much it is, and I need this much money. So I technically use addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, percents, decimals. Most of it's involved in a huge word problem. And I suck at word problems, but I know exactly what I'm doing at home. So, and I'm sure there's tons more that I'm using that I really don't know that I'm using it. So that's me, and that's what I got, and that's my stuff. Thank you.
Should add a percent fee to that messenger app, so that each time you get a 10%.
Oh, I'm telling you, and they don't charge, which is really nice. You can send as much money as you want,
Nice.
as many times as you want, and they never charge you.
Excellent.
So I find out all the good stuff because it makes my life easier.
Yeah, so you can see how to use money or how to use numbers in your life, in your world, many different ways you can bring it in. So that's what the final project's about, is for you to examine how you use numbers in your life.
Can I go next week or the week after?
Of course. Good.
I don't know. I'm saying or the week after because I don't know if it'll be ready.
You got
for
it.
next week.
Yeah, so
Okay.
usually we get done early enough, and
Yeah.
just let me know in advance, and I'll try to get
Yeah,
done a
I'll
little bit
email.
sooner.
Okay.
But yes, you're
Does it
welcome.
need to be presented in person?
It doesn't. You can also, because I've actually live streamed this, but you could record it and then just upload it to me.
Okay.
So there's a place in Canvas you can just, and sometimes the videos take too much space, so what you do is you like put it on YouTube and then you send me a link. Yeah. And there's something called Powtoon or something where people, you make little animated things and then you just narrate it. That's another way to do it. I had never seen that before. 2 people did it last time. I had little cartoon characters,
No, I went so
and they just narrated
Last
it through.
week's totally hard, dude.
Quite
Well, I was
entertaining.
because I went to Oklahoma City for an audition last week, and I was like, and it was
Is
a last
the,
second thing, so I didn't even know I was going, so I had to get everything together so quickly, and I was trying to get it all done, but it was like I was
The fact that you did it.
Is the gender
I
did
was
not
so
help.
confused.
with answer
I
key
did
or
not do
email
it.
that
I
flash
did.
from